I really enjoy Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. The mindless hack and slash gameplay feels great when going up against hordes of monsters, the soundtrack is absolutely one of the best in the entire Zelda series, and it's a prequel to Breath of the Wild. Well, that last one is only kind of true. You see, for as much as I love the game, and trust me, I put well over 200 hours into the game, even I can see it has its flaws. I could sit here and talk about how the frame rate gets choppy here and there, but there's always a lot happening on screen, so it's not even something worth mentioning. No, instead I'm talking about the story, and just a few plot holes and inconsistencies it has when also looking at Breath of the Wild. If there's something that I don't mention, then please feel free to comment them down below. It's also worth mentioning that I understand the game is not canon. The game even tells you that this is a whole separate timeline from the main one. This is just something that I wanted to talk about. The Master Sword is the blade of evil's bane and can only be drawn by one who carries the spirit of Hylia's chosen hero. Each incarnation of the hero, Link, has pulled the Master Sword during their young adult years, the only exception being the Hero of Time who pulled the sword from its pedestal when he was just a child. But even then, he was sealed away until he was physically ready to use the Master Sword. When Breath of the Wild finally released, it was revealed that Link actually found and pulled the Master Sword from its pedestal at the young age of just 12 or 13 years old. Whether or not he kept the sword for all that time is unknown, but we at least know that he had been using the sword during his tenure of protecting Zelda. In Age of Calamity, however, Link doesn't receive the Master Sword until he is at least 17 years old. He even starts out as a Knight of Hyrule. Now I understand that from a gameplay perspective, the devs didn't want Link to have such an overpowered weapon at the start, and every Zelda game has to have its Master Sword moment. Even the original Hyrule Warriors had one of those moments. But come on, couldn't they have at least given some kind of throwaway line to keep some type of consistency? They could have said something like, the Deku Tree has been watching the Master Sword since Link pulled it, now we need to go and get it. Something that would have just tied things in and not seemed so out of place. During the quest Urbosa the Gerudo Chief, the party makes their way to none other than Gerudo Town in the Gerudo Desert. According to the Gerudo law in Breath of the Wild, no males are allowed to enter Gerudo Town. The only seen exceptions to this rule are the Goron race, but it's never really explained why. Maybe they're gender neutral, or maybe they just don't care. Zelda and Impa are able to get inside the town easily enough, simply because they are women. And Zelda is the princess after all. There was even a memory in Breath of the Wild showing Zelda in Gerudo Town without Link or any male guards to escort her. So why is it that Link can just stroll on in without any issues whatsoever? I'm able to kind of look past this inconsistency only because it is during a time of war, and the Yiga clan did invade the Gerudo Town. The only way you can kind of make this make sense is just having Link wear the Gerudo Town desert disguise, but even then, it just wouldn't make any sense. Impa has a very strong presence in Age of Calamity. I would argue even stronger than her appearance in Breath of the Wild. By then, she's just a little old woman who directs Link to recover his memories, save the Divine Beast, and so on and so forth. But in Age of Calamity, she's at nearly every pivotal point in the story. From the visit to Faron Spring to the escape from Hyrule Castle to Fort Hateno, it really doesn't make sense where she could have exactly fit in the timeline in the main game. Impa's inclusion in Age of Calamity felt more like she was playing the obligated role of Zelda's protector, but she already had Link specially appointed as her knight by King Rome himself. I get what the team was going for, it's really cool to have a young Impa playable in a game, but even so, she could have just been stationed at Kakariko Village or something the whole time. I can still look kind of past this one, but it's just one of those things that felt a little out of place, almost forced I'd say. There's a little cutscene that plays at the end of one of the DLC missions in Age of Calamity, and even on the first viewing it didn't really strike me the right way for a few reasons. Urbosa and Riju successfully held back both an army of Ganon's minions and the Yiga clan, so naturally they have a little bit of peace and quiet after the battle's finished. That is until Master Koga quite literally shows up out of thin air and just somehow steals the Thunderhelm from Riju, and this is where the problems start. Koga puts on the Thunderhelm, albeit with a little bit of a struggle since it seems a little too small for him because of his whole top knot. And then Riju snaps her fingers and sends down a bolt of lightning right on the Yiga chief. And it just works? Okay, but why? The Thunderhelm is shown to be immune to the effects of lightning despite who wears it, and in the right hands, such as Riju, it's powerful enough to prevent Vanaboris from striking lightning on its victims. So does that mean Urbosa's lightning is just more powerful than the Divine Beast? Also, she makes this comment here.
One such as you would need 100 years or more before you could wield this helm.
Even if it does take 100 years, it will be mine! Just you wait!
why did she feel the need to say that to Koga? It felt really out of place and almost out of character for Urbosa to say that, and if anything it just felt like the writers were saying that to write a little nod to the main Breath of the Wild timeline. But if they wanted to do that, there were way better ways of doing that, just not this. After beating the main story of Age of Calamity, the post-game becomes available to the player, and in it, something pretty interesting and extremely lore-breaking happens. There are these special missions called Blood Moon missions, which from a gameplay standpoint just means the enemies in that respective level just get a dramatic increase in level, basically making it the unofficial hard mode. While I do understand and kinda like the idea that what the Zelda team was going for, it just doesn't make any sense in universe, both in this timeline and in the main timeline. First of all, this is only accessible in the post-game, after the heroes successfully seal away Calamity Ganon. It wouldn't make a lot of sense for his malice to spread as far as creating the Blood Moon when the big bad is already dealt with. And speaking of creating the Blood Moon, that leads me to my next point. In the original timeline, the Blood Moon only began to show after the Calamity struck. In fact, it was a means to extend Calamity Ganon's malice and influence since he was being held at bay inside Hyrule Castle by Zelda herself. Again, I like the idea the team was going for, but they could have at least made it stay within the realm of the established universe. I'd like to say it again that I really did enjoy Age of Calamity for what it was, but when looking at the story and the continuity, that really is where the game starts to falter. If there's anything I missed or just didn't mention, please let me know in the comments below. Most of this came from prior knowledge based on Breath of the Wild anyway. Consider liking the video if you enjoyed, as it always helps out the channel a little bit, and with that all said, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.